Hi, my name is Dr. Ryan Arthur. I am the Learning Development Coordinator in the School of Business, Economics and Informatics. This session will teach you how to write the methodology section or chapter in your dissertation. The methodology chapter should be written in the past tense. There are two approaches to developing a methodology. You can steal a methodology, or you can develop a methodology from scratch. We will go through both approaches today. Let us first discuss stealing a methodology. I know it sounds controversial, but it's not. When I say steal, I mean that you adapt an existing methodology to suit the needs of your project. What are the benefits of stealing a methodology? It gives you structure. It gives you a blueprint. If you are unsure about what to include, you can use it as a guide. This gives you a shield from criticism. The methodology that you stole has been peer reviewed and checked by other scholars. Also, you can see the results that this methodology produced. By adapting the methodology, you have connected your dissertation with the knowledge field. The way your methodology is structured and articulated is in line with the literature. You have drawn inspiration from the literature. Stealing is the best way to understand methodologies. As I said before, me personally, I find it difficult to understand methodologies from generic research books. I need to see it applied in the study. I need to adapt it myself. I need to play around with it myself. Stealing is a way to do this. And the most important reason, it gives you a critical foundation. What I mean by this is when you steal a methodology, you have to adapt it to your study. This process of adaptation is a critical activity. Adding to this methodology, taking something away from this methodology are critical activities. So, where should you steal the methodology from? There are two places that I recommend. The first place to steal a methodology is from a journal article. One of the best places to find journal articles is your university library catalogue. Search for an article that resembles your dissertation topic. For instance, if your dissertation topic is about gender inequality in the advertising industry, type in the keywords gender advertising industry. Pick an article that broadly looks at your topic area, then adapt the methodology of that article to suit your dissertation. Number two, the best place to steal, bar none, is Ethos. Ethos is a repository for PhD and master dissertations. Search Ethos for a PhD or a master dissertation that is in the same area as your dissertation topic. I prefer PhD to journal articles because PhD methodologies are typically longer. Some journal article methodologies are just 1 or 2 paragraphs. Also, you can use Ethos to search for your supervisor's methodology in their PhD. Most PhDs completed in the UK will be stored by Ethos. Does anyone know where else to get methodologies from? If so, leave your comments in the chat section. However, when you steal or adapt a methodology from a journal article or PhD thesis, you must do 4 things or you'll get yourself in trouble. Number 1, paraphrase and reference key sections of the methodology. Acknowledge the source. Explain that this methodology draws from Smith's study. Please do not copy Smith's study word for word. Make sure you only paraphrase the key sections, not everything. Number 2, state why you selected this methodology. This is very important. You must justify your adaptation of someone else's methodology. You could have developed your own methodology or adapted another methodology, but you chose Smith. Why Smith? You could have chosen 1,000 different studies, but you chose Smith. Why? When you explain why you chose Smith, this is essentially a critique. You explain why his study stands out. You explain why his study is exceptional. You are demonstrating critical analysis. Or you could argue that Smith's methodology had an excellent approach, but it is missing a crucial component. Your study has come along to add that crucial component. This is a critique as well, because you are pointing out a problem in their methodology, then putting forward a solution. Your adaptation of that methodology is the solution. I've highlighted the last 2 points red because they are the major critical analysis areas. Number 3, explain what was discarded from the methodology. Explain why you discarded it. Throughout your methodology, make explicit what and why you discarded from Smith's methodology. Be very explicit. You can discard parts of the methodology because they were not relevant to your study. Make sure to explain why they were not relevant to your study. Or you can discard parts of the methodology because you believe they were ineffective. Be sure to explain why you believe they were ineffective. And lastly, number 4, explain what you added to the methodology to serve the needs of your dissertation. Explain why you added it. Throughout your methodology, make explicit what you added to Smith's methodology. Be explicit what you added and also mention the benefits of adding sections to Smith's methodology. We will now explain how to develop a methodology from scratch. This is a typical layout of a methodology. This is a template of a methodology. For the remainder of the session, we will go through this template. Please download this template just below this video. Just below this video in the description box, you'll find a link that will take you to this template and also a link to these PowerPoint slides. So the first section in your methodology chapter is an introduction paragraph. This introduction paragraph is the first paragraph in your methodology. You should try to start every chapter of your dissertation with a mini introduction like this. State the aim of the methodology. Example, this chapter will provide an overview of the study's methodology. Very simple. State the purpose of your methodology. Then briefly connect your research aim with this methodology. Here is an example. Then finally, the last sentence or so in your introduction paragraph, explain how your methodology is arranged. This chapter will commence with a discussion on the study's adoption of the post-positivist approach. This will be followed by an explanation of the research approach. The next section will do this, the next section will do that, so on and so on. What is a research paradigm? A research paradigm is a worldview about conducting research. Your research paradigm consists of an ontology, epistemology, and a methodology. You are expected to adopt a research paradigm for your dissertation. The ontology, epistemology, and methodology are very difficult to understand. It seems that there are a million definitions, and some of these definitions are vague and difficult to relate to. I find it easier to understand when I think about them in question form. So, the ontology in red, who am I in this world? How do I see the world around me? How do I view the world? How do I respond to the world? These are all ontological questions. Moving on to purple, epistemology. How do I know that the way I see the world is true? How can I verify this? How can I be accurate? Am I seeing the world as it truly is? How can I know that I am responding to the world in the correct way? All of these are epistemological questions. Finally, in green, the methodology. Methodology is a concrete system that you can put in place to reveal the truth. So, the ontology of the positivist is that I am a scientist. That is who I am. And it is my duty as a scientist to observe one reality that we are all subject to. This is my ontology. The only way I can reveal this one reality is to be as objective as possible. Only objectivity will lead me to the truth. Only objectivity will show me what is true and what is false. This is my epistemology. So I will use a detached and numerical system. I need a system to be detached so that I can increase my objectivity in order to get closer to this one reality. You know the phrase, women lie, men lie, numbers do not lie. Numbers are objective. Numbers will take me to the truth. This is the methodology of the positivist. At the other end of the spectrum is the critical theorist. The ontology of the critical theorist is that I am an imperfect human being researching a reality that is fluid and shaped by the forces of gender, culture, power relations, institutions, etc. It's difficult to get close to this one reality because reality is always moving and is shaped by all of these forces. The way I get to know the reality is by revealing the context of the situation we are observing. We must know the context. Context is everything. The truth is hidden in subjectivity. Subjectivity is our friend. So the system that I put in place to understand the situation must be connected. It must be involved. It must be participation focused. It must be qualitative. This is my methodology. This is an example of contrasting ontologies. James O'Brien, a radio host, discussed the child Q case a day before. When he discussed it a day before, he focused on the errors of the teaching staff. But on this particular day, he wanted to focus on the errors of the police. He wanted to objectively look at the despicable actions of the police's role. He wanted to isolate the police's role, just like a scientist would isolate something in a test tube. Then a caller said, you cannot separate the police's actions from the teacher's actions. You cannot separate the education system from law and enforcement. Context is everything. We need to know the whole context. The caller had a point. Foucault has talked about this connection between the school and the prison, the school to prison pipeline, as we call it today. Who was the positivist in this debate? Who was the critical theorist in this debate? So sometimes we disagree on a subject, but it's not really the subject that we disagree on. We have to go further back. We have contrasting ontologies and epistemologies. James wanted to know the truth by the scientific method, but the caller wanted to know the truth by immersing herself in the full context. Often, when we disagree with each other, it is rarely the issue we are disagreeing about. You have to go back to the ontology to find the root cause. The ontology of this character sees it as a W, but the ontology of the other character sees it as an M. So they are disagreeing. WM, WM, WM. It seems like they are arguing over letters. It's not about letters. It is their point of view. You have to go back to their point of view, their ontology. So before I look at your findings, before I look at your analysis, I need to know your point of view. I need to know your ontological basis. I need to know why you believe what you believe, your epistemology. If not, we'll be arguing about your findings. We will be arguing about your analysis. But that's not the issue. The issue lies with how you view the world and how you verify the world. One more example before we move on. So the character asks the other character, what is your dream job? Then the other character replies, why would I dream about labor? They have contrasting ontologies. One of the characters sees the world of work as normal. We see that it is normal to sell our labor to the highest bidder. We do not see anything abnormal about selling our most precious asset, time. The other character does not see this as something normal or something to be desired. The character says that he needs to rethink his life, meaning he needs to readjust his ontology. Thankfully, we do not have to engage too much in these debates. We have ready-made research paradigms, ready to be used and applied. Scholars have done the work for us and created these research paradigms. All you have to do is choose your flavor. You can take a research paradigm off the shelf. It contains all the necessary ingredients of ontology, epistemology, and methodology. For example, you do not have to speak at length on the ontology of critical realism, or speak at length on the epistemology of critical realism. The mere fact that you selected critical realism in the first place, you have already chosen all three ologies, all wrapped up together in your paradigm. So here are the different flavors of research paradigms. The positivist, functionalist, normative. Is your dissertation concerned with explaining the world from an objective point of view? Interpretivist. Is your dissertation concerned with establishing people's perceptions, experiences of the truth? Or maybe the critical. Is your dissertation concerned with exposing the domination of particular discourses? Or maybe the constructivist postmodern approach. Is your dissertation concerned with how claims to the truth are constructed and socially negotiated? Or the critical realist position. Is your dissertation concerned with observing one reality, but acknowledges that human beings can interpret this object reality in several ways? You must be consistent. Consistency is the key. Whichever flavor you choose, whichever paradigm you choose, you must be consistent with that paradigm. So if you adopt the positivist approach, you are constrained to using quantitative methodology. And you are constrained to using these quantitative methods. If you adopt the interpretivist approach, you have to use a qualitative methodology. And you are restricted to using qualitative methods. If you adopt a critical approach, you have to use a qualitative methodology and use these methods. If you adopt a constructivist approach, you have to adopt a qualitative methodology and use these methods. However, if you are a critical realist, you have some options. You can choose quantitative or qualitative. The key thing is the methods that you choose really depend on the nature and object of your study and what one wants to learn about it. So you have some freedom with the critical realist approach. Keeping with this theme of consistency, consistency is key. So the assumptions of the paradigm that you choose must be followed through in every section of your dissertation. So if you adopt a positivist or post-positivist paradigm, which assumes that knowledge is objective, independent of values, interest, and the feelings of the researcher, I do not expect to see in your dissertation a personal reflection. If you adopt the social constructivist and interpretivist paradigm that assumes that the researcher and the researcher are joined, so the researcher's values and bias shape the study, I expect to see in your dissertation a positionality statement or reflective account. If you adopt the social constructionist paradigm that assumes that knowledge is interactive, co-constructed, and negotiated, I expect to see that your interviews are interactive, your interviews are co-constructed and negotiated. It wouldn't be top down, it would be participation focused. So in 3.1, the research paradigm, you would define the research paradigm, explain the assumptions of the research paradigm. Here's an example. And after this paragraph, you will justify the research paradigm. You will put forward some reasons for selecting this paradigm. How will it help you achieve your research aim? And there's examples. What are some good reasons for choosing a paradigm? The paradigm is prominent in the literature. Most studies that you read use this particular paradigm, so that's why you adopted it. Or maybe it was used effectively in a similar study. Or maybe this paradigm offers you a complete package. So if you want to find out more information about paradigms, I recommend that you go to Ethos and type the name of the research paradigm to find more information. Or type the area of inquiry of your dissertation and the name of the research paradigm that you're interested in. You can type this into Google Books or eFOSS or a journal repository or a generic Google search. So you type the dissertation area that you're currently looking at, and next to it, you'll type the research paradigm. So for instance, if you're looking at care homes and you're interested in the post-positive approach, you want to see what articles have been written, what books have been written, give it a Google search, see what pops up. I recommend Google Books first and foremost. You're looking at care homes and you want to see the social constructionist approach, what else has been written within this research paradigm. You want to examine the critical realist approach, or perhaps you want to see the interpretivist approach. Very simple formula to finding out information about the research paradigm that you're interested in. 3.2 Research Design. Explain and justify your qualitative or quantitative mixed methods approach. Explain and justify your deductive or inductive approach. So whichever one you choose, explain what it is and how you're using it, and justify your use. Essentially, the methodology is about justification and explanation. You explain, then you justify, explain, then you justify, explain, then you justify. If your research contains participants, there are a number of ways to select participants. You can choose them through a particular purpose: convenience sampling, snowball sampling, or random sampling. There are many more sampling methods, but it's always good to discuss which sampling method did you use to select your participants. So you would describe your participants, explain how you selected these participants, and justify why you selected the sampling approach. So in this situation, the student chose snowball sampling, so they will need to justify why they selected this particular approach. Then you explain how you've applied this sampling approach. Be very specific to the details of your research. And was there a limitation or a hurdle with this sampling approach? If yes, how did you address this limitation? How did you remedy this limitation? 3.4, looking at the methods. Define your method or your methods. Justify why you selected that particular method. Explain how you applied the method. And examine if there was a limitation or hurdle with the method. And if there was, how did you address it? How did you remedy the situation? And just to clarify, we should see the methodology as the toolbox, a larger toolbox, but the method is the tool. The method is the interview. The method is the survey. The method is the questionnaire. And the methodology would be looking at the qualitative aspect of that. But the method is very specific. It's that specific tool that you're using for your data collection. A great place to get information for your methods is by using Google Books. So if you want to know about the advantages of a particular method, type advantages and the method that you want to know about, and Google Books will direct you to books that talk about this. It will only give you the preview, but sometimes all you need is that preview. That should be sufficient for you. And the good thing about finding the advantages about this particular method, you can use it as your rationale or when you justify why you chose semi-structured interviews or why you chose surveys or questionnaires. As well, if you want to find out about the limitations to a particular approach, search disadvantages and the method. So in this situation, the student wanted to know the disadvantages of survey questions. So they put this into the search bar to find these disadvantages. And as well, if you want to know how a method is used within a research paradigm, type in the research paradigm and the method. So in this situation, a student wanted to know how interview questions are developed by social constructionists. So she typed this in to the search engine. And also, if you're a post-positivist and you want to know how to develop survey questions, type that into the search bar and see what comes up. And this is a way to show critical planning and forethought when you're developing your interview questions or your survey questions. So Make a note of your research questions and show how the interview questions are derived from your research questions. So in this chart, you're showing a relationship between your initial research question and the interview questions that came out of that. You're showing that relationship. So your research question number 2, and you're showing the interview questions that came out of that. I've included the link to this figure. This is actually taken from a textbook. So just below this video, you have access to the PowerPoint slides. In the PowerPoint slides, you'll be able to download these slides and it will take you to the original source. So just to show the connection between your research questions and how you formulated your interview questions, you can include this in your methods or within your appendix section. And if you do not have research questions, but you have research objectives, you can state your research objective and show how you developed your interview questions. All of these interview questions came out of these research objectives. You're showing that relationship. And once again, your second research objective and all of these interview questions came out of that. And I have a link to the 9 types of interview questions. Always good to think about how you interview and the manner that you interview, and show your methodology of interviewing people as well. It's always good to sketch this out. It shows critical thought and forethought. And once again, I have the link to this figure 3.1 in this document. Data analysis 3.5, explain how you analyze the data. Justify why you selected this type of analysis. And state if there was a limitation or a hurdle with this analysis approach. If yes, how did you remedy the limitation? Ethical considerations. If you are using live participants, live subjects, here are a number of ethical considerations to think about. But if you are using no participants, here are some ethical considerations to think about. And just to end now with the conclusion section, summarize the chapter, summarize the methodology chapter. Here's an example. And take the reader to the next chapter, escort the reader to this next chapter. You should always try to end every section of your dissertation with a mini conclusion like this. Summarize what you have done and escort the reader to the next chapter. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe.